Thank you. Um, so thank you everyone. Very good afternoon. And sorry I cannot be there because I had another commitment here. Um, so today I'm gonna talk about cover crops and just to explain how I'm gonna progress is I will start with some basic concepts of soil health, sustainability, land management, soil management, the basics of soils to start with. And then we'll look at cover crops as a tool for all these sustainable soil approaches, right? Um, my name is Debankur Senial, and I'm a soil health specialist with University of Arizona, and I'm stationed in Maricopa Ag Center in Maricopa, Arizona, and my home department is environmental science. So people can describe or explain, define soil health as in many different ways, and there is literally no strict definition for soil health because, as I believe and most of us believe, soil health is defined as is the capacity of the soil to function the way we want the soil to function or the nature wants the soil to function. So a soil is only be healthy if it can provide the things it provides, the function it does, like providing food, providing water, exchange gases, and all those things, right? And overall, as we are human and we think about human welfare, soil health should be contributing to the environment, the environmental health, the societal health, the community health. So as soil is a very basic, very um very what I can say. I mean, it's everywhere. If you think about soil, like water goes through soil, air goes through soil. So having a healthy soil takes care of many other things that we do in an environment. Now, overall, soil has many different functions. It provides foods and nutrients and water to the plant. It shelters the biology. So after oceans, soils have the biggest biotic community. So most life resides in soil after ocean, right? So huge diversity of microorganisms, mesofauna, other microfauna, flora, everything resides in soil and depends on soil. And the gaseous exchange, I'll try to explain a little bit more in my later slides, because carbon is one of the elements that we do talk about a lot. There are a lot of issues around carbon, especially in deserts like Arizona. I mean, I don't like to call it a desert, but we are termed as a desert agricultural zone. Because of carbon, because we do not have carbon because of some reactions, biogeochemical reactions, and I'll talk about those a little bit and try to explain. So more or less, we know what's the purpose of our soil is, right? Now, if the soil is kind of all those purposes, we call that soil healthy. If not, then we call okay, it's soil is not probably healthy enough. We can work on it. But why do we care about soil health? Because it's a non-renewable resource, which is not true. I'll be lying. We can make soils. I mean, it takes probably millions of years to create a gram or 10 grams of soils. Therefore, it needs maintenance because you cannot just have soil. And all around the United States, even globally, I think in last 50, 60 years, I was looking at a consensus, and they're saying we lost almost half of our topsoil, at least all around the world, everywhere in the world, because of our the ways we farm, and it's so extensive, and we have to grow food to feed our population, global population of like almost 7.5, 8 billion. We're going to reach 8 billion very soon in 10, 15 years, and 9 billion in 2050, and we are predicting that we have to feed these people. So we need to first grow enough food for everyone, and we have to work with the soil but we have to be very smart and efficient, which we are. I mean, but we have to be more efficient. There is no, sky's the limit. So there is no limit of being efficient. And that's what we'll talk about. So we need maintenance. That's a term I'm trying to talk here. Like you have a car, you have a home, you maintain the home and car. And sometimes you pay money for no extra thing, just to maintain the car, just to maintain your home. Soil is something like that. You are given a soil, you own the land. Now it's your job to maintain it. It's our job to help you maintain it, right? Sustainability, a term very much used everywhere in every aspect. Let me clarify one thing here. When I talk about sustainability, I don't talk about only environmental sustainability, because a farm to be sustainable has to be environmentally sustainable and economically sustainable. So unless you make profit in your farm, the farm is not sustainable. So there is no farm. So there is no question about sustainability. So whenever I think about approaches, how we can make a better soil, how can I make a healthier soil? I think about how can I make it healthier soil while the farm should be able to make profit. I cannot come up with any approach that will not be profitable. So here's the concept of sustainability. Here's the concept of soil health. We have to be working together, right? Like we know, we have to grow a lot of food, and we kind of exploited. We thought that we would add a lot of fertilizer and the crop will take it up and we'll be fine. But it did not happen like this way. And it doesn't happen that way, because whatever fertilizer outside input we can add to a farm, what happens, only 30 to 40 is the max. I mean, 30 to 35% we can take. The rest of it is lost in the environment. And these are all chemicals. These are all salts. And we all know how bad salt is, right? So we're actually adding a bunch of salt that the plants are not going to take. So because we are adding at a point when the plant is not able to take it. And these salts are very, very, very soluble, because that's how we use fertilizer, with water, with irrigation, or we want to be very soluble so the plants can take it. So if the plants don't take all of it, where it goes to the environment and pollutes the environment. And then what happens when plants need these nutrients later or during other parts of their growth stage? They take it from the soil. So we exploit the soil nutrient source, exploit the soil resources, but we don't fill it back because we think adding fertilizer will do it, but it doesn't. So that's why we declined our soil fertility levels all over the world. There is only a few occasions when we improved it, and those farms, those fields, those land taken some extraordinary measure. Otherwise, it was the general trend is a declining fertility trend. So we have to take care of our soil now. And definitely we will conserve our natural resources, water, air, soil, and that's how we become sustainable. Now, as I said, for each farm, for each ranch, for each growing business, producing business, the approaches can be different. The techniques can be different, but the principles, they remain same. So if we try to improve our soil's health, we want to get a healthier soil than what we have, the principles would remain same everywhere. But how we reach that principle, how we follow that principle, how we reach that goal, that can vary farm to farm. And that should vary farm to farm, situation to situation. What crop you want to grow, what implements, what tools, what machines do you have, how much money you can spend, how much money you can afford. All these factors come together, but the principles are same. So the idea is we follow the principle and try our best job with whatever we have, whatever resource we have, whatever targets we have, whatever goals we have for our farm or ranch, right? So first is we have to have some soil armor. We cannot keep bare soil. Soil should be covered all the time, because bare soils will be impacted by air and water, like splashes and other eroding factors, and we'll lose soil. That's how we lost soil in most of our farmlands, because after the Green Revolution, after that big revolution of mechanized farming, we started doing more monoculture. We started growing certain crops, and Then we took a lot of time to prepare the land for those crops. And by that time, we did not get our soils covered. Weathering event happened and we lost our soils. But so the first principle is cover our soil, put an armor on our soil. It can be many ways. It can be cover crops, it can be residue, keeping residue, it can be mulching, anyways, but you have to have an armor. Second thing is maintaining living roots. I get this discussion a lot. Oh, we had this crop and their roots are still in the soil, but those are not living roots. When there are living roots, so what happens, and I'll show you the equation. It's a very basic fundamental equation all over the world. It's called photosynthesis. It's sunlight, carbon dioxide, and that's how plants trap carbon dioxide and produce carbon-based products that they exude through the roots. And then the biotic community, the microbes, the other living things in the soil, they can be fed. That's the only way they can be fed. If you don't have a living root, you don't have the connection. You don't have the purpose of the root. You do get some carbon from the dead root, but it doesn't feed the microbial community, the biology of the soil. So you do need to maintain living roots most of the time in the year because sunlight is free. The more you capture, the more you gain, the more you capture carbon. That's the only way you can capture carbon. Diversity. So, we all know how important diversity is in society, in every community, in everywhere. Unless you have a diversity, you will always exploit one resource than other. Like if you grow one crop, every crop is like us, like someone like one kind of nutrient, the other crop likes other kind of nutrient. If you have only one kind of crop, you will only take one kind of nutrients and resources from the soil and exploit one part of the soil. Well, rest of the part will stay intact and you will deplete the part that you are taking. So diversifying the system, you kind of balance all the nutrients of water, movement, the carbonaceous materials. There are different kind of carbon materials, and some of them are good for one crop, some of them are not good for one crop. So to having a balance, you need to have some diversity in your system in different ways. You can plant different multiple crops together, all in rotation, right? Stock integration. So, well, I understand in many cases, you cannot really integrate livestock because there is an issue with food safety and others. But I think in other cases, well, I'm still working on it, how we can do it. I'm working on some proposals, how we can work with livestock integration when the field wants to follow all the food safety guidelines. I don't know enough yet, so I don't want to go there. But in other cases, livestock integration can be the deal, because livestock takes a very minimum space and cycle all the nutrient and carbon in that small space. It requires a very small space. So these cattle, these sheep, these goats, they're machines. They fasten the process of nutrient cycling, carbon cycling. So we get more carbon, more nutrient deposited, and they can fulfill the need of the soil, not need of the crop or the plant, need of the soil. The soil also needs those nutrients back that the crops took up, right? So livestock can do that. And plus, livestock also a good food source, right? It can utilize the energy more efficiently. It's all about being efficient, right? So if you think about the cattle, the livestock, they can utilize the energy captured by the plants from environment most efficiently and provide the most back to the environment again. So livestock integration is a very good deal. Not to disturb the soil. We want to farm more naturally. Well, so what do? We stop tilling, we stop spreading things, we stop it. No, I'm not saying that. That's why I said minimize, not stop. You minimize. You can always find ways to minimize how you disturb the soil. Like let's say you prepare your land for a crop, and then every year you do like 5 or 6 passes of tillage to get the till. Now you start doing some practices like you have some cover crops, you add some manure, you have some amendments, and try if you can reduce 1 or 2 passes in the first year. Not in all of your field, just one corner, one border, or part of your border, and see if you can see a difference or not. If you like it, then you can try and figure out how we can minimize the soil disturbance, how we can keep the roots intact and not, break down everything. Sometimes we need to do that because we cannot grow crop otherwise, and that is fine. I'm saying over the whole year, over the whole season, find ways how you can minimize disturbance to the soil and let it be more natural, right? If we follow all of this, we find 2 more principles that we can get covered. We can conserve soil moisture because more carbon can hold more moisture, better spore space, better aeration. We can conserve more moisture with living roots and with root channels. We can infiltrate more water from precipitation, so we can conserve more moisture. And also we can minimize chemical use. Those are foreign materials for soil. We don't want to use a lot of chemicals. There are a lot of problems happening everywhere in the world. We all know about them, but we have to grow the crop. I understand. Sometimes we need to use them, but we can minimize over time. I believe because the principles are same everywhere in the world. It took time, but it works. But we have to figure out a way how it works. So we have to keep these principles in mind so that we go towards it. Now, I'm not going to spend any time on this because we all know what are our barriers, right? Very high temperatures in the summer, very little precipitation. We have a lot of salt, and due to temperature and due to the condition we have, we cannot save organic matter in our soil, so it decomposes very fast. And with no organic matter, we don't have enough biology going on because those microbes, they need carbon and nutrients, mostly nitrogen, phosphorus, because they want to have their life well settled, right? So without organic matter, the biology is absent. But let's look at where it is, just to understand what we're fighting. So look at Arizona, right? Look at Arizona, and you can see the difference. So this map shows the difference between the evaporation, which is a natural process. It will happen no matter what. Whenever you have sunlight, you will have evaporation. Whenever you have heat, you have evaporation. And then you have precipitation, which is addition of moisture to your soil. And see Arizona, right? I mean, it's tricky. It's just it's how we are situated in this planet, right? So we have to fight this. We don't have enough precipitation, and we have a very, very high degree of evapotranspiration. But sometimes the transpiration term is good because you think about what transpires, all the plants. Where you find most of the plants? In the forest. Where you find most of the rainfall? In the forest. In most of the forest. Why? Because it's a cycle, it's a water cycle. Now here in Arizona, for some reason, for some practices, this cycle is broken. So we have to figure out how we can get the cycle fixed a little bit so that we can transpire more efficiently. We have the crops that transpire more efficiently, right? Going to the next, we know what is our problem. So we see the next year, probably there will be no surface water for many regions in Arizona. And the reason is the Lake Mead and Lake Powell. The water level is going down and we are seeing it. It's coming. So you have to figure out a way how we can build up the water level in our soils, in our environment. Now I talked about soil organic matter decomposition. It's a problem. We do have a lot of crops that add a lot of carbon. We do have a lot of crops like that. The problem is we cannot hold the carbon because of our temperature and the process. And looking at the map, it's a map of soil organic carbon. The lighter the color, to the yellowish side, yellowish lighter side, it's low carbon, and the reddish side is a higher carbon. And you can again look at Arizona and see how lighter we are, because we cannot keep carbon. And we know how important carbon is. It builds the soil structure, it helps infiltrate water and store water, boosts the biology, and for it release nutrients, it acts as like slow release nutrient carbon. And for sustainability, for healthy soils, carbon is one of the most important factors. So now go back to the basic equation I talked about. It's just photosynthesis, right? And then there is another process. So this carbon is this carbon or carbon-based materials is being used by the microbes. And how they use it, look at this equation. So any soil organic matter is used up by microbes that creates carbon dioxide that goes back to the atmosphere. So what we need is continuous source of soil organic matter and continuous cycling of this carbon from carbon, atmospheric carbon, which is carbon dioxide, to soil organic matter, and then back to atmosphere as carbon dioxide, and then again back to the soil. Now, these microbes, when you have bigger microbial population, you have bigger carbon sink in the soil, because these microbes also hold carbon in their bodies, right? Because every living being, the microbes also have carbon in their bodies. So the more microbes we have in the soil, living microbes, the more carbon we can save in the soil, we can store. We call it carbon sequestration, right? And there are many ways to explain it. It's just getting carbon from the atmosphere and keeping it in the soil. How do you keep it in the soil? By photosynthesis. When plants take the carbon and make carbon in their body mass, right? So we get the residue that has carbon, and it stays in the soil. We have carbon in the soil. But whenever we have temperature, we see these microbes work fast. They work fast to decompose this organic matter, and it becomes carbon dioxide. So how we can stop that? How we can keep this carbon in the soil? The only way to do is thing called carbon-nitrogen ratio. So we have to balance carbon-nitrogen ratio. I mean, if we kind of expand it, so it should be like carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur ratio. So what I'm trying to say, if your soil has fertility level enough to provide these microbes with nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, and these are the three basic nutrients they need, along with carbon, then only these microbes will keep this carbon in the soil. Otherwise, they will exhaust the carbon and just make carbon dioxide. Otherwise, if they have nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur in enough quantity in the soil, then they will increase their population. They will proliferate, and then we'll save more carbon in the soil. And this is the basic concept of carbon sequestration. So take carbon, have enough nutrients in the soil so that microbes can hold it in their biomass, and we can measure it. It's called microbial biomass carbon, and it's one of the measure of soil carbon levels, right? Because all other carbon can be very easily used up by the microbes and become carbon dioxide, or can never be used up by the microbes. And that's also depends on the carbon-nitrogen ratio. If the ratio is too high, like it's a very, very strong material that the microbes cannot use, that carbon will never be used. So when you test your soil, you might get a high carbon, but then you see the biology is poor because this carbon is not used by the microbes, probably due to less microbial diversity. You don't have the microbes that can use it, or most microbes cannot use it. So having a lot of carbon is not good, but having a lot of microbial biomass carbon is good for your soil health. Salinity, why does it happen? Salts are soluble, whatever salts are soluble. Then what happen when evaporation happens, they come to the top of the soil profile, and then the water evaporates, but the salt remains. So there is salt, right? And what remains? The undissolved salts, the insoluble fractions, the insoluble parts of those salts. And that's how we get the salt issue. And that's how we got calicese, calcium carbonate. It's nothing but calcium carbonate. It's not soluble in the water, so it cannot move. It stays there and it grows, because the more carbon dioxide is there, the more calcium you get. Because our soils are very, very rich. Arizona soils are very, very rich in all the elements, all the minerals. So we have no lack of minerals. It's just not can be used. Like phosphorus, you have a lot of phosphorus in the soil. It's just is not available to the plants because phosphorus get fixed with calcium and other mineral, elements, right? And produce something that is not taken up the plant. Um, so we have phosphorus, but the plants cannot take it. So these are the problems with soils. Now, let's talk about cover crops. Now, if you remember principles, all the principles that I talked about, and kind of try to fit cover crop in that scenario. Well, soil armor, yes, cover crops can provide soil armor. Living roots, yes, cover crops can provide living roots. It's always functioning in there. It's taking carbon and providing carbon-based materials for the microbes. It can do diversity. If you grow a mix of cover crops, or you grow one crop and then the cover crop that you grow is not the same species, not the same type or same family of crops, then you diversify your system. So you can do ecosystem diversity. Livestock integration, a lot of the fields, many farms right now, I know that they started doing it because the feed prices are high, and off season you probably don't have the availability of feed for cattle feed, for sheep, for goats. Cover crops can provide excellent source of food if you can design it properly. If you design a mix of cover crops, which is perfect for the soil and perfect for the grazing. So it can provide livestock instigation. And if you keep cover crops on ground, it will hold the soil together. So it will not let you disturb the soil. It will not let environmental condition disturb the soil. So cover crops can serve all these purposes of soil health, right? So that's cover crop is a tool that can provide the most benefits of soil health. But we have to think one thing. Cover crops are crops, they use water in a region where we do not have enough water. We have to be very, very cautious and efficient about using cover crops because, well, we have to grow the crops that will not harm the next crop because there are many reports nowadays that they harm the next cash crop, taking up more water, moisture. But in irrigated system, we can choose when to irrigate, when not to irrigate, how much to irrigate, and to take advantage of some rainfall, like something happened last weekend. Last weekend in central Arizona, we got a large amount of rain. And if you have cover crop in your field, like I just visited a field yesterday, I don't have a photo here. I just visited yesterday, and that field just planted cover crops and they got a lot of rain and the cover crops are growing like, I mean, it's so nice to see that they can use the water now. Because if you did not have a cover crop, just a residue or just a fallow ground, those water would not infiltrate. Those water will run off, take your topsoil with it. So cover crops are very, very important in every condition. So, but we have to take care how we use it, what cover crops to choose, and everything. I'll try to give you some mechanics on that. Well, look at this field. We always want to make this field into a farmland, a more greener field, right? So we want to make something like this, right? And this is a photo from a farm in Hillaville. And I was working with them. I started working with them recently. And see, if you believe this is the same field. It's the same field. It's the two sides of the road. And one side we had cover crops, and other side there is nothing. And this farmer started, they believe in these principles and they know the cover crop will work. And they have a wheat crash crop. And see, the same soil can be made better. And cover crops can be used to make some deserted land into a cropland because they will grow wheat this spring, and they grow wheat every season after the cover crop. But the rest of the period, they keep the cover crop, they do graze, right? So our target is keeping the grounds covered because all this fallow area, they will lose soils. This soils will become dirt. This dirt will become PM10 particles, and that will cause hazard to human health. There are so many ways this can pose hazards to us. So cover crops, what it does, it boosts biology because it provides food for the biology. It improves the soil structure. The roots are holding the carbonaceous materials, the exudates that I talked about. They're also gummy substances, so they help the soil particles to stick together and have a good soil structure, right? And they can also help catch and store soil moisture. Now, simple, we talked about photosynthesis, right? We talked about carbon, how carbon is, and look, whenever you see something is growing, there is always some transaction of carbon is happening. There is no way, there is no carbon involved. The carbon will become carbon dioxide, that is fine, but we have to have the tool to bring that carbon dioxide back into the soil and keep it in the soil as much as we can, right? That's the target. And that's what carbon sequestration is. And that's something we can talk about nitrogen sequestration. Well, people call it nitrogen fixation. You have a legume crop, you can have legume crops as your cover crops, or in a mix of cover crops, you have some legume species that can fix atmospheric nitrogen and keep into the soil, help you fertilize. This nitrogen, these nodules, it's nitrogen. We all have seen this, right? And what happens? This will slowly release nitrogen, slow enough not to lose nitrogen very fast. Like I told you, the fertilizer you apply is very, very soluble. It gets lost in the environment very fast. So if the plants cannot take it as efficient as it can, be, the rest of it is lost. But for this nitrogen will never be lost because it is bound. It is bound in the soil. It is bound with the residue. It's bound with the nodule tissue. Only when it will be released, when some microbes will work on it and release it to, and then there will be a crop. There will be something to take care of it. So this is what sustainable thinking. This is what nitrogen sequestration. This is what nitrogen capture, carbon capture talks about. I probably do not have to explain these photos. This is like, how best you can have a armor in your soil. You have rain, it will catch it. Rain will not come into direct contact with the soil. It won't erode the soil. These crops, there are root channels. They will take the moisture. It will keep the moisture in the soil. You will have a better moisture condition the next season. And then if you have wind erosion problem, no problem. You see any cropland and in fallow land, and you see wind blowing and see where the dirt is coming from. It's always from the fallow land. In the cropland, there is no dirt at all because they hold the dirt, they hold the soil, they keep it soil. Any soil out of place is dirt, but when it's kept with the concrete structure of roots and biology and water and moisture and air and everything, the nice soil environment, then it's soil, then it is healthy soil. That's where we approach. Now, another thing is like, it's called catch and release, and it's a concept every fisherman knows. If you like to fish, you know what catch and release is, right? So we can use cover crops in this catch and release technology. See what happens. You have fertilizer, the crop did not use it, it's still in the soil. You get a rain, the fertilizer, whatever it is so soluble, it will either evaporate, it will leach out of the soil. So you put cover crops. These cover crops will take up this excess nutrients. You don't have to add nutrient to the cover crop. Cover crops will take this excess nutrients, and then when the cover crops terminated and you have the next crop coming in, it will become residues. And these residues will be broken down by the microbes slowly over time. That will release nutrients, and then your next cash crop can use these nutrients that you applied the previous season, previous fall or previous spring, right? So you can have more efficiency using cover crops. So they catch the available nutrients, keep them incorporate them, assimilate them in their biomass, become residues, and release it slowly back to the cash crop. So your cash crop gets some benefit of it. And then if you have a legume cover crop, you also have additional nitrogen fixed by those legume cover crops. So all that helps next cash crop. With fertilizer price increasing, we should be using this nutrients more efficiently, and cover crops can be the tool. See the diversification. We want, well, when you are growing a food crop or something, it is very hard to maintain diversity, but we can always, the other part of the season, we can always put some cover crop mixes to provide diversity, so that it is not imbalanced. The nutrient structure, the nutrient fertility, it's not imbalanced. The water is taken from one zone, but not from the other zone. So one zone is getting more moist than other. It won't happen if you have a diverse system, because it will balance it out. Definitely living roots. Well, by the way, I told you about the farm I visited, and that farmer, for the first time in his life, well, he started very recently, 2019, when he started farming first. First time he saw an earthworm in his own field, and he was delighted. He was delighted looking at the earthworm. He could never believe, just doing, I think they did last year a cover crop, and this year it was a cover crop field. And they have seen earthworms. Why those? Where did they come from? They were there, but they were just not helping the soil earlier, because they did not have any food, any good environment to be in. Now they have cover crops. These earthworms just loving it. So the biology, the living roots, the connection with the atmosphere to the soil, to the above ground with the underground, this is beautiful. And we have to maintain this, because this is natural. We say, like, I like what Gabe Brown says. He says, we call the traditional farming as a conventional farming, but that's not actually conventional, because he argues conventional is what nature does. It's diverse. It's too much biology going on. It's a nice, undisturbed, less managed system, right? So, well, I like the idea of, like, well, that's probably not conventional. That might be traditional, but not conventional, because nature showed us how to farm, how seed falls on the earth, and there comes a tree, there comes a plant, a seedling. So living roots makes this connection. So we have to keep living roots most of the time, as much as we can during the season. Crazy. Now, it's very hard to have a farm, to have both a cropping system and a livestock business. If both exist, that's great. But I believe there are two things about grazing. First of all, feeds are costly, and you don't have to haul and feed these livestock. You can just leave them, and no livestock ever eat or graze those cover crops or those grazed lands to a point that they cannot revive. That's the beauty of the nature. They always graze up to a certain point, and then you have to move them to the new part of the field, so that you can revive the growth of this cover crop or the paddock of the crops that they're grazing. So it's called rotational grazing, and it's pretty popular. It's very, very labor intensive. It's very, very labor intensive, but it's one of the smart technologies, and cover crops can help that. And you can really choose some cover crops that grow a lot of biomass in less amount of time, and have some mixture of fiber, nutrients, nitrogen, and juiciness, sugar, everything that you need, and you can graze them in the off season especially, and they help a lot, and they continue the cycle of nutrients. They eat their food and graze those lands and poop out all those nutrients back, the carbon back, the excreta all from those livestock, help soil build their soil health. If you cut a crop and sell it on the market, you are just taking out from the soil, giving nothing back to the soil. These animals, these grazers, they can do that. And it can be any way. I mean, it can be any species, depending on what you can have, and depending on how much area you have and how much effort you can put to maintain them, things like that. But I think livestock integration is going to be the big deal in improving lands. The lands that, like, where you cannot grow any crop because it's not good enough, right? There will be lands like that. So I mean, it is great to have cover crops because cover crops, you can throw a mix of seeds and see what can come out, and whatever comes out will take care of the moisture, the nutrients that are available and grow there, and you'll have some carbon capture, some sunlight capture, some canopy that can harvest those sunlights and put those carbon back into the soil, and we'll start the process of building your soil. And then you have the grazers in, and they will cycle them faster enough to build your soil faster. So I think livestock integration is going to be a big deal, but there are a lot more research to do. There are a lot of tricks out there, and not all results are good. So we have to think more about it and just try it out. Just try it out. What works? What we have to try it out and see what works, what doesn't. And yeah. Sorry. Okay. And then biology. I cannot not talk about biology. It's just we need to feed the underground world so that it can help us fed in our life and have healthier foods. The more you have biology, the less chemical you should have to apply, or the vice versa. The less chemical you apply, you probably have more biology going on, and that's one reason. Because the ways, like I heard some reports with cover crop termination with a broad spectrum herbicide. It did not help the biology a lot, but then you terminate it more naturally, like using a roller crimper or other mechanical way where you're not applying any chemical. You see more better biology there. And look at mycorrhizae. Look at this beautiful mycorrhizae connection. Look at this nodules. Look at this earthworm. They make your soil healthy. They don't need, they just only need a better environment. You create that environment, they will take care of everything. You just have to monitor, and we have to try to improve. That's all. And cover crops can help that, because you can have several different species to send out several different types of food, a buffet of food for those microbes, and you can find a lot more communities coming up. Definitely. Next, they will kill the pests or take care of the pests that will harm your crop, and they can thrive on this cover crop, cover crop lands, and you can keep some place for them in your field when you cover crop. Because if you just have two cash crop and a fallow period in between, where will they go? They have no place to go. But if you have cover crops, they can have a place to stay, right? And then they will help you in the next season with your pest management. Same with weed management. You put cover crops in, what will happen? They'll put residues. They will compete with the weed seeds. So now you plant what you like to plant. It's not like, what are weeds? Weeds are nothing but nature's way to like including diversity, right? That's how nature incorporates diversity, integrates diversity. If you don't have anything, you have nutrients, because your crop did not use all the nutrients, and you have water from rainfall when it's off season, and you have nutrients, you have water, that's enough for these weed seeds. They will grow. So put cover crops and grow cover crops and you design your own cover crop. See the weeds coming up on the sides where it was not cover crop and no weeds in the middle. So action. Well, not everyone will have this issue, but many of you would have this compaction issue. And the left photo is not, it's not my, I clicked the photo, but it's not me holding it. And those are some radishes. See how deep it could go and how much compaction it can break. And well, and the top of the radishes and turnips, they're so sweet and juicy. The grazers love them. But they also decompose very fast. So you have to utilize it fast. There are other things like, it's called allelopathic effects. They have some kind of allelochemicals, it's called, and they help control some pathogens in the soil. There are more research to be done. There are some reports here and there, but brassica species they help control pathogens in the soil by producing allelochemicals, right? So now, how will you choose cover crops? We want to do this or this, depending on what kind of farm you have, how much acreage you have, how much money you want to invest, uh, what kind of production system you have, and definitely you have to remember one thing, that carbon nitrogen ratio is the big thing. So you have a crop like any grass will have high carbon nitrogen ratio, and any broadleaf species will have a low carbon nitrogen ratio. So you have to keep balancing them out so that you have, because this carbon nitrogen ratio will dictate what kind of microbes will use them, will decompose them. So depending on the carbon nitrogen ratio of the residues, the microbes can decompose them or cannot decompose them, or decompose them very fast or very slow. So always think about that, choosing your cover crops, that I have this cash crop. So what kind of cover crop I should do? You should not definitely do the similar kind of cover crop and do the exactly contrasting kind of cover crops. That's the biggest deal, identifying what cover crops to choose for your land that will not take most from, because your cash crop will need the nutrients in the next season. Cover crops to take the other parts of the nutrients that your cash crop will not need, or resources that your cash crops will not need. So you always have contrasting kind of cover crops. So there are different kinds. You can be like this, like a lot of grasses or a lot of broadleaves like this, or it can be in between a crop row, like between corn here. It can be between like orchard rows, and or it can be just a paddock just for grazing. There are different kinds of cover crop. It should be farm goal specific. I like to use the term, it's called farm tuned. Your cover crop should be farm tuned. Whatever you have available, whatever tools, whatever implement you have available, how much money you can spend, how much area you have, how much area you want to use for cover crops. All of this will matter when you decide on what kind of cover crops. Because for a 2-acre land and for a 80-acre land, you might choose completely different kind of cover crops when all other things are similar. Just because some things are easy to do in 2-acre land and some things are easy to do in an 80-acre piece of land. So all those things matter. There are many other factors. So it's definitely a think of discussion, think of thinking like what I can do, what are the crops I want to grow, and what are my purposes. And I kind of prepared this slide, as you can look at it, like there are like 3 different kinds, like, legumes. They can fix nitrogen, provide a lot of biodiversity, and have low carbon nitrogen ratio. And then you have grasses, which have fibrous root that hold the soil together, produce a lot of biomass and very high carbon nitrogen ratio. Then you have brassicas, they have low carbon nitrogen ratio, and they can break compaction. They have flowers that are colorful and bright and attract pollinators, so help your pollinating crops, right? And then there are others who can control pests, can be used as alternative forage, like for grazing, or for allelopathic agents, like all this rye, oats, canola. They all have some kind of allelopathic effect against some kind of pathogens. So, like there is a problem with fusarium in Yuma, and a lot of people use canola as a allelopathic tool to reduce the fusarium population. So, depending on what you need, what is your goal, you choose your cover crop. But above all, you have to keep this in mind. For soils, you don't have a spray, you don't have a potion, or there is no magic chant that you can do to build your soil very soon. It is a very, very slow process. It is a very, very much time-taking process, because a soil is a multi-dimensional system. It acts with water, it acts with air, it acts with living community. So you want to change soil, it will react in different ways. You cannot control all those factors. So you have to be very, very patient, follow the principles, do what you can do best, and just wait. And you will see. And we have tools, we have indications, they're called soil health indicators. We can look and test the data and see that it's changing. You cannot see the output, and you cannot probably see any increase in productivity in your field in short term. But with time, and it depends on what is your initial situation, where you start from, right? So it takes time. You have to remember that before you start doing it, because otherwise you might be frustrated, because it takes time. In many fields, can be the best farmer in the world, but still, it's soil, it's nature. You have to work with it. You cannot be frustrated, or you have to wait and see the things working. And it does work, because the principles, if you believe in the principles, if you see the principles have logic, it has science, and you see that in the nature, and you trust it, you have to stay with it, and you will build your soil. And with this, I will end. And if you have any question, I will take. You can always reach out to me through my email. That's my phone number. But yeah, I mean, any way you can reach out to me. I'd love to talk. I'd love to chat. I'll come visit your farm. Just let me know, okay? And thank you so much for listening.
All right, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, we're gonna mute the other. Okay, so Patrick had a question online, and then does anyone in here have questions? Oh, shoot. Okay, so online, you can probably see the chat.
Yeah, like, do you have any thoughts on amending the soil with humans? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes.
Patrick? Okay. Hey, that's a good question. I mean, well, I never used a soil human, but I understand the principle behind it. But I think something when I look at something and I want to comment on it, I want to see how sustainable it is. Well, by principle, it should work, but I've never seen it work, so I do not have any real thoughts on it. But I'd like to work with it if possible. If you use it in your farm, or you would like to use it, I would love to test your soil, or I'd love to guide you and look at, how things are happening, how things are working out. But I personally do not have any first-hand experience using any soil treatment. But it's a carbon. Does adding ammonia burn the microbes in the soil? They do. Yes. I believe you're talking about liquid ammonia, right? Yeah. Yes, they do. They do. Any chemical would, in that high concentration, will burn. I mean, I don't know if it's burn or not, but they'll kill. They'll kill the microbes. Yeah. Not all of them, but probably a large amount of them, large proportion. Yeah.
All right, I think we're good on questions. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Hold on.
I cannot hear it. I cannot hear you properly. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. We have some different things. Okay, hold on. Is it because of this? Go ahead.
I can hear now better.
Can you hear us now? Okay, can you just do it? We're switching. Yeah, thanks to Bunker. That was awesome.
Yeah, I can hear now. Yeah.
Perfect. We're now going to switch to the next speaker.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you. Great talk to Bunker. Great talk.
Thank you so much.